So today I want to talk about something that a lot of Republicans have been warning about, and which their warnings were not taken from Obama and those who support the Iranian nuclear deal. So basically what we're dealing with now is an emboldened Iran. We can look through the last several months and see that Iran has continued to ramp up their tactics against the United States, and they have continued to push the line and the boundary as to what we are going to allow from them. So let's go back and talk about some of these incidents that we've already had, leading up to the one that occurred last night, right before the State of the Union address, in which 10 U.S. Navy forces or members were taken pretty much hostage by Iran, and then an apology was forced from them. But first, let's talk about the prior incidents. Now, this goes back to the first incident, which was the ballistic missile test that Iran conducted last month or the month before. Now, this test was strictly against UN sanctions. It was strictly against any sort of deal that we've had with Iran, and yet this test was proceeded, and the test brought pretty much no resistance from the global community. So this brings into question why Iran in the first place was testing a ballistic missile. Now, it's common knowledge that what goes on top of ballistic missiles is nuclear warheads. However, Obama has repeatedly stated that his nuclear deal is in fact going to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear missile. Yet, we have Iran testing a nuclear missile, or a ballistic missile, that for some reason we can't connect the dots that it's because their nuclear program is in fact going to continue. And it is in fact because our nuclear deal with them is in fact not going to prevent them from obtaining a nuclear warhead. This then led to the incident in which rockets were fired towards the direction of our aircraft carrier. Now, the Navy themselves stated that it was dangerously close and posed a threat not only to our aircraft carriers but to the shipping in the Suez Canal. However, once again, the Obama administration took no attempt in order to actually have a response to the event. Instead, they largely ignored it, hoping it would go away. However, this once again shows that Iran is pushing the boundaries. It wasn't a mistake that the rockets were fired towards our aircraft carriers. It was a show of power. They're trying to show them that they are the dominant force in the area, that they can go head to head with the United States, and the United States will not have a response, which is true under this administration. This all led up to the event that happened last night, that was the 10 U.S. Navy forces being captured. Now, the story goes that a U.S. Navy vessel was having engine problems and accidentally drifted into Iranian waters, at which point Iran Navy forces took the vessels and its 10 crew members hostage, essentially, and while deals were worked out between the nations in order to actually get our forces home. Now, this morning, we actually got our Navy members home, but this was not before Iran was able to coerce an apology from one of the members, in which it states that the United States was sorry for their actions and that the Iranians treated them well. There's only one reason Iran took this apology from their members, and that's because they are trying to humiliate the United States, and they're trying to send a message around the world. There's only one reason that Iran broadcasted that message around the world, and that's because they're sending a message. They're telling people, they're saying, hey, look, you think the United States is the strongest force in this area? You think the United States has your back? Well, the United States apologizes to us. So in their minds, that makes them, I don't know what exactly they're trying to do, but we can see that over and over again, this fits into the pattern of an emboldened Iran. We can see that Iran is continuing to toe the line. They're continuing to see how far they can push us before we push back. Now, it stands that under the President Obama's administration, we have become unsafe, more unsafe. We have become weaker in foreign policy, and we have essentially become the laughingstock of the world. We're all talk, essentially, with no sort of response. We have nothing to back up our strong talk. The president has shown that he is not willing to have the balls to actually go after people, enemies of the state, and to actually enforce things he says. This all goes back, you can see, through the Syria deal, in which we stated if chemical weapons were used against people, which we have evidence they were, that we would in fact evoke a response. And instead, there was no response ever taken against Bashir al-Assad after he gassed his own citizens. Now, whether or not this weak administration, this weak president is actually going to take any sort of response against further Iranian actions has yet to be seen. But in all honesty, it's probably not going to happen. Whether or not Iran will continue to push the line, well, it's probably going to happen. So whether or not the president is going to take actions is irrelevant at this point. We know he's a weak man. We know he's not willing to make the United States strong. What is going to matter is if we get a president next term that is willing to make the United States strong and is willing to take action against those who threaten the United States. Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terror, and yet we are negotiating with them under this administration. It's been a long-standing United States policy to not negotiate with terrorists, and yet that is exactly what we are doing under the Iran nuclear deal. And if their ballistic missile test is any sort of indicator, we can see that the nuclear deal that President Obama promises will eliminate the threat of a nuclear Iran is nothing but hogwash, and that it is just an illusion. And in fact, Iran will maintain their capability to possess nuclear warheads.